BestPass provides back-office automation software and tow management solutions for commercial fleets of all sizes. They save fleets time and money by consolidating payments and providing insight to better manage costs per vehicle. Founded in 2001 by truckers for truckers, BestPass is a trusted partner on the road and in the back office. And to learn more, call 888-410-9696 or visit www.bestpass.com. Welcome to Taking the Higher Road, a DriverReach and FreightWaves production. I'm your host, Jeremy Reymer, founder of DriverReach, a modern recruiting and compliance software solution. On this show, I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insights to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges, driver recruiting, retention, and compliance. I appreciate all the positive feedback on the show. Please remember to rate and review Taking the Higher Road, whatever platform you use to listen. This week, I'm honored and excited to have on the show an amazing champion for the industry and just overall great human being, Doug Marcello, Chief Legal Officer of Bluewire and shareholder with Saxton Stump law firm. Doug's one of the good guys. He even wears a white hat as he works to help carriers avoid the ever-increasing nuclear verdicts and settlements brought on by those wearing the black hats, the plaintiffs' attorneys. So glad to finally have you on the show, Doug.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me. Honored to be here and very generous introduction. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Well, I'm excited to get into the innovative work of Bluewire and how you're revolutionizing the trucking industry with that action-first approach to protecting, carriers' reputations. We'll also dive into your background. What was the catalyst for being such a champion for the industry, and we'll highlight your expertise as a trucking defense attorney. Plus, I want to make sure we have time for a question from a listener during our deeper dive segment. Does that work for you? Awesome. All right. Well, before we dive in, as is the custom, I'm curious if you have any book recommendations for the audience, maybe something either you've recently read or something that's just really impactful that you'd like to share.
Yeah, let me throw out several of these, Jeremy. Number one I just recently read was called Outlive, and it's about how to extend your life cycle. When you get to be my age, Jeremy, you look for anything you can get. But one of the things there is I think it's applicable to what we do in the trucking industry. And the analogy being that most of what causes health problems is something that's a function of what we don't do on a daily basis or what we do. And that's the type of thing I think that's crucial in terms of safety in companies as we go along with that. A couple of the other ones, anything by Malcolm Gladwell, to start with. The Checklist Manifesto, which is on a medical side, but the importance, I think, in trucking again. They started out as a way to improve the mortality rate from surgery in third world countries. It turned out to be just as applicable in the best hospitals in New England, in Boston, in terms of the importance there. And I think that's, one of the other ones there as well there. And then the last one is the Black Swan, which in terms of risk analysis, the threat of risk, the unexpected. In terms of, we talk and we try to deal with the risk that we have, but, most of what is going to be the most impactful is something we just don't even see coming. And it kind of fits in, and I talk about, when I give the presentations, that we have to, in many ways, treat safety like we would a horrific weather event, a hurricane. We don't know when it's going to come. We can't stop it. But we have to do what we can to try to mitigate the losses we have.
Excellent point. By the way, several books. Outlive, I just read that this year too.
Yeah.
Very impactful to how I think about eating and exercise, staying mobile, staying active. I just wish I had started this a lot earlier, as I think probably anybody who's reading that.
And if you did, Jeremy, just think how I feel. Wishing I started earlier. So yes, very much so.
Well, and Brian Fielko, a really good friend, and obviously you know Brian well. He actually sent me that book, the Checklist Manifesto. I haven't read it yet, but
really?
So thank you for. Now I'll have to make sure I read it. It's obvious that it's destined.
Absolutely.
So now your journey in trucking defense began with a significant case involving a fatal accident. How did that experience shape your passion for this field, leading you to focus exclusively on trucking matters for, the past couple decades?
What happened, Jeremy, in that case, it was driver of a triaxle had a 40-something young lady pull out in front of him. She's killed a couple of young children. It wasn't his fault. And we were able to come across and get it resolved for a nominal amount of money, a fair amount, considering there was no liability. And it helped to present to me the dilemma that our drivers face, that no matter what happens, we're looked at and faulted at first. So what we need to do is, these are the folks who are delivering every day to America. They're the ones who, during COVID, when we all sheltered in place, they were the ones who kept America open, provided the food, provided the medicine, got us what we needed. And I saw that the challenge they had and felt that, my contribution and area of practice would be best defending those people, particularly from the lawsuits that they've become a profit center out there. As you've heard me say before, the folks on the billboards who live by the mantra of hit a truck, get a check, and they look at our units as 18-wheel ATM machines. We've got to defend against that, protect against it, in fact, take action against it.
18-wheel ATM machines. I've not heard that before, but that's catchy, and that's true. I mean, it's exactly what I think is happening. And we've all seen the data from ATRI's recent report on nuclear verdicts and settlements, and I know such an incredible exponential uptick, since around like 2017 or so. First, I'd like your take on why has it gotten so out of hand? Why?
Yeah, a number of reasons. Number one, we see the huge advertising that's going on out there to create the mindset. One of the things, and we've got the nuclear verdict study that ATRI did, but I like to think of it as the ATRI trilogy. Rebecca kind of likes that too. We look at the nuclear verdict, we look at the smaller verdict, and then we look at the insurance piece of that. And the insurance piece talks about one of the big things we have is social inflation. You've got, people who are generating numbers and getting numbers for what they do that are anesthetizing jurors to such large numbers. Mahomes getting $500 million in sports, Springsteen getting $500 million for, musical talent, the Kardashians getting money for
whatever they do.
Yeah. Hey, they got it going. But people see those numbers and they apply them in the courtroom. In addition to that, we have the reptile theory that has emphasized and flipped this around into a situation where it is premised on the notion of the jury not so much looking at the accident, because it really, if ever, is there a nuclear verdict that deals with the accident. What it deals with is a systemic failure, and the impression that systemic failure is going to be a community threat to not just them and their family, but the entire community, and their job is to attack that. And in the process, and I just had a trial several weeks ago in which they tried to do this, in the process, what they try to do is, in effect, pervert the justice system from one of negligence. Did somebody act reasonable under the circumstances, to one of absolute fault. If there's an accident, you must be at fault. And that's where a lot of that comes into, Ben.
Well, that's probably a good segue into Bluewire and how you're helping to prevent carriers from falling prey to that reptile theory that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Can you maybe share, maybe a little bit for those few who might not be familiar with Bluewire? I've had the luxury of having Steve Bryan on the show. We talked about that. And even to your point, he specifically said it's not the accident that leads to the verdict. It opens the door, though, to what you just described. So kind of how is Bluewire helping?
What we do, Jeremy, is we analyze publicly available data to identify the vulnerabilities of trucking companies that can be exploited for a nuclear verdict. So, it is looking for and identifying it so that they can be rectified, so they be corrected, and so that they can get ahead of it and prevent it. It's like we were talking about outlet. It is a function of identifying the condition so that we can address it before it becomes symptomatic on that. That's the short version. Going back and, Jeremy, I think between the two of us, we've been at a number of trucking seminars, and it's kind of like requiring a fiddle player in a band in Texas. In order to have a trucking seminar, you had to talk about the reptile theory. But I'm not sure how many people there ever read it. And I got the book back in 2009. You can get it today on Amazon. It's around $2,000 a pop right now. I'm glad I bought early.
Right.
But it tells you there's 3 ways in there. In fact, the authors of it tell the plaintiff attorneys, hey, here's 3 ways it's not going to work. We're telling you up front. Number 1, if there's no legitimacy to the claim. So if they're just throwing it against the wall. Number 2, if it's just an accident. There's no systemic failure. And number 3, if there's nothing there to collect. What we do at Bluewire is identify those factors that need correction so you can get ahead of it. And at least say, we've got a plan in place and we're working on it right now. So that's what we're doing with the data we have at Bluewire, so we can get that out to folks so that they can then take that action ahead of time. Proactive before the accident happens.
Well, I was literally, when I mentioned earlier about the white hat, that's quite literally, seeing you, seeing Steve, see the rest of the team at different events with the white hat on. Yeah. When I first saw that, this is early after the launch, I said, hey, you stand out. You're the good guys. And I love that parallel. But, could you share just a little bit about that? What is the white hat movement and how does that align, with the work that you're doing?
Well, the white hat, and again, kudos to Steve Bryan about addressing this. It's become our identifier on it, and it's just gone great. But Steve had said, in his background from Vigilo and from a lot of the tech industry and all, he is relating us to what are called white hat hackers in the tech industry. And that's when you hire somebody to try to attack your system to find your faults before somebody else gets in there, the bad guys get in there. That's what we're doing for you one. We're like the white hat hackers of an IT system. We're looking to find your vulnerabilities so they can be corrected before the folks on the billboard can exploit them.
And see, I'm thinking of it as when I was a kid watching The Lone Ranger. But
now,
there's a parallel.
Hey, that works too.
Right.
That works too. Yes, absolutely.
Shortly after Bluewire's launch, DriverReach joined Bluewire's army of allies.
Absolutely.
Equally committed to that joint mission of helping companies reduce or eliminate that risk. At least in our case, it's with things that are still 100% within their control. Managing driver qualification file compliance, which may be a good segue into our deeper dive question, which is a question from one of our listeners. The question is, with increasing risk of lawsuits and settlements, how important is it to properly qualify the drivers we hire?
Yeah.
What do you have to say?
It is vital. Again, one of the primary systemic failures that the plaintiff attorneys try to prey upon is the qualification of the driver involved in the accident. And that is one of the key things you've got to get ahead of to do. I do a talk called The Defensible Driver, and we'll be doing that in Bucks County, Pennsylvania in a couple of weeks. And I go through that and look at it, and it's a situation on there where, you cannot afford to put a driver in the seat if they're not qualified or there's an issue with it. And, I tell the companies, look, I know there's a shortage and I know you've got loads that need moved, but think about it. How much are you getting on that load? And how much is that bad driver going to cost you? Or worse, how many loads are the good drivers going to have to pull to pay for that one load that the bad driver pulled on? Driver qualification is crucial in today's litigation environment. But we did a mock focus group a number of years ago where we presented a hypothetical situation and created a background application for a driver, hypothetical. And we went through a number of points on their violations. The driver only had one accident that was arguably bodily injury related, and also it took a look at it in terms of he had a DUI back when he was 13, I think. So, sprinkle it in there. In fact, after we did the presentation, one of the safety directors came up and said, that would have been my best driver. The response that the jurors had on it, Jeremy, was incredible. And, those of us in the industry who are used to looking at the apps and the VQ files, we kind of get anesthetized to that, but it is incredibly vital to go through that. And number one, to call out the drivers who you're definitely not going to hire. Identify those rare ones that you're going to hire. And then you have the group in the middle that I call kind of the Thunder Road. They ain't a beauty, but they're all right, to get those and identify what training they need so that you can get ahead of it. And you have an answer if and when that driver gets in an accident to say, we identified it, and, we'll through that, and that's what we did on that.
Well, and technology obviously can help in a lot of ways. That's one of the reasons why DriverReach exists, is just to be able to provide, the opportunity to ensure thorough, consistent application of, all of the things that you need to make sure that you do consistently. Because again, those are the things that you can 100% control. I might not be able to control the driver's behavior all the time, but I can certainly control, the things that are related to that, DQ file. But something that is kind of...
Absolutely, Jeremy. And the key is, and that's what we're doing with Bluewire, and what you're doing with DriverReach is proactive. Get ahead of it. And that's what you need to do. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but great point. What's
exciting to me about this year is I saw earlier this year, and I've been working closely with Bluewire since, about you created something that's known as a gap score for nearly all motor carriers. And so I'm hoping that you can share what that is and how carriers can use that data, that gap score, to better focus their energies on the exposed flanks in their organizations.
Yeah, and we score all 760,000 carriers that have DOT numbers. We use publicly available data, and what we did is honed in on what we believe is the key data points that indicate the possibility for vulnerabilities. And it ranges everything from out of service accidents down to what is the frequency of these companies operating judicial households. Well, this gives the companies an opportunity to look at the gap score. And also we have a second instance where we have a motor carrier product, which allows them to dig deeper into that for individual fleets so that they can identify, see where they're scoring, and then take action, not just to protect themselves from accidents, but in the insurance world, so that you can say, hey, here's the true picture of our company. This is what we're doing. We added in then a component of beyond compliance. Now, I'm sitting in Washington, D.C. right now, Jeremy, and I think it was 2015 that Congress told the FMCSA to come up with a beyond compliance program. The ironically named FAST Act. We're still 9 years into it, wait for it. Well, we allow companies then to add to that so that they can tell their true story. What do we have? How much did we invest in it? And so it's not a question of profits or safety. It's an investment in safety and a belief in safety as well. So that's what we're doing with that.
I love some of the terms, we talk, judicial hellhole.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, it's so apropos. And you mentioned the speed of government, which I mean, you've been around long enough to know 9 years, that's nothing. I think I got into the industry 20 years ago, and it took 16 years. I mean, they were probably talking about the FMCSA, that Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. They were probably talking about it well before I got involved, but that took 16 years, I think, to come to fruition at least.
Judicial hellholes is a designation that the American Tort Reform Association comes out every December and puts out a list of the worst places to be seen in the country. And in terms of the timing of government, I love the quote by Dan Horvath, who always says, we can't tell what year the government's going to do something, but they can tell us what month it's going to be. But, we just don't know what year. So, the DN does it much better. But, I think it's a great line.
Well, getting back to the gap score, DriverReach is in the process of integrating Bluewire's gap score into our interface so our customers can see exactly where they stand. So I'm excited to roll that out this year and hope it'll make a big difference. Right. But for those in the audience who aren't customers of DriverReach, what's the best way that they can learn more about the gap score and about how they can have some access to that information? Where would you suggest they go?
They go to bluewire.ai. Bluewire.ai. We have a series of videos on there done by Erwin, who is our champion. They're a minute 45, 2-minute videos of different sections of it. They give a great explanation on it, Jeremy. And we're thrilled to be involved with DriverReach and the integration we have on this. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And so you're very active in the industry. You're constantly speaking at events. You're contributing to publications, blogs, highlighting a lot of important legal topics. Can you share maybe some of the most pressing legal issues or maybe emerging trends in the industry that you believe that we should be aware of? Anything come to mind?
I think one of the big things is just kind of, what I saw and what we're seeing is the trying to take a situation and make it an absolute liability as opposed to negligence, perverting and distorting that one there. One of the other things, the key things, is the notion of what I call, and actually my good friend Randy Gilliott from ATA had called attacking or getting rid of the dark period. And the dark period is that time between the accident and when suits file. A lot of times what will happen is the insurance company will get a letter and say, this is a letter of representation. We represent the claimant in this case. Don't talk to them. We'll be back with you and let you know when we have a demand or have a lawsuit. And what will happen on it, Jeremy, during that time, the plaintiffs are ringing the bell. For those of you who are old enough to remember gas stations, ringing the bell in terms of just, boom, the money coming in, they build up their damages. Now they go, hey, this case has got to be worth X because I've got Y damages so far. What you got to do is to attack that dark sum. What I do, the letter of representation comes in, I fire a letter back. I represent the trucking company. Here are releases for your medical records and employment records. Tell me who you employed by, where you've got treatment, send me the releases.
It's really critical to attack that dark period that you referenced, right? That's exactly. I think that's what it boils down to, and make sure that you're getting ahead of it. And by the way, having someone like you on their side is a huge advantage, I think. And so
thank you very much. And a lot of things, Jeremy. Just a quick thing is, and again, going back to that ACTRI study on insurance, because of the increasing premiums, a lot of companies are taking on risk themselves. They can't just assume this is being done on their behalf. They have to be proactive and involved individually on there as well.
Well, and for all of the, again, you speak often, you write often. How, just for the rest of the audience, how can we stay connected to all that valuable information that you share on a consistent basis? So where should we direct our listeners?
Probably the easiest is to email me at doug@bluewire.ai or just join me on LinkedIn, Doug Marcello on LinkedIn. Always appreciate it.
And you have a YouTube channel, I think, don't you?
I do, Transport Center. So YouTube channel on there, as well as a Substack address on that as well, Transport Center.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Those are great resources for sure for anybody who really wants to keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on. And Doug, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I always enjoy seeing you, and I'm grateful to have you as one of the good guys. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much. Again, I greatly appreciate it. Honored to be here. And one more thing, Jeremy, from the last time I saw you, which was in a laundry room in Hawaii, I'll have those shirts done next week, Mr. Reymer. So,
yes, that was fun. It was a little hot, a little sweltering, but it was a blast.
It was great. But it was a great time. Jeremy, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And thanks for joining me for another episode of Taking the Higher Road and spreading the word to your industry peers. We really appreciate it. Remember, you can submit any questions or comments, including those which may appear on upcoming deeper dive segments at podcast@driverreach.com. And don't forget to rate and review Taking the Higher Road, whatever platform you use to listen. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.